The open support of the United States for India's candidacy at the United Nations Security Council saw panicked Pakistan then scuttling and trying to get attention on the LOC issue instead. A move that did not go down well as India fought back and emphasized that its letters to the United Nations were actually linked and echoing statements of previous terrorists.
टेंशन्स बढ़ी और ख़ास तौर पे लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल जो कश्मीर में है उसकी वायलेशंस हुई हिंदुस्तान की तरफ से और वर्किंग बाउंड्री में भी, तो उस हवाले से ज़ाहिर है पाकिस्तान ने अपनी जो सफारती एफर्ट्स हैं उनको तेज़ किया यूनाइटेड नेशंस में। हिंदुस्तान वर्किंग बाउंड्री जो कश्मीर ऑक्यूपाइड कश्मीर और पाकिस्तान के दरमियान है वर्किंग बाउंड्री, उसमें हिंदुस्तान जो है वॉल बनाने की कोशिश कर रहा है और हम समझते हैं कि मुख्तलिफ सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल रेजोल्यूशंस हैं उनकी खिलाफ वर्जी हो रही है।
Sir, there is still no official meeting between India and Pakistani leaders, isn't it? Like after Ufa, sir.
Well, what can I say? You know, Pakistan has made its position very clear that, you know, if there is a meeting, we have to discuss all the issues.
Yes, sir, but the issue of terrorism is still the core issue. Why only Kashmir first?
Well, Kashmir is the core issue as far as Pakistan is concerned, but at the same time, terrorism is also a core issue, is a main issue for Pakistan. It is a main issue. It is as much a concern for Pakistan as it is for India, and I think we need to discuss Kashmir. We need to discuss all the issues, including terrorism.
No, sir, but Kashmir will only be discussed if rather terrorism is discussed first, because terrorism is the core issue. Don't you feel so? Pakistan is facing terrorism itself.
Well, you see, the point is that Kashmir is the one which has been the problem for since 1947. So that is the issue that needs to be resolved. And I think once the Kashmir issue is resolved in accordance with the UN Security Council resolution and also in accordance with the wishes of the Kashmiri people, I think everything else will be resolved.
टेंशन्स बढ़ी और ख़ास तौर पे लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल जो कश्मीर में है उसकी वायलेशंस हुई हिंदुस्तान की तरफ से और वर्किंग बाउंड्री में भी, तो उस हवाले से ज़ाहिर है पाकिस्तान ने अपनी जो सफारती एफर्ट्स हैं उनको तेज़ किया यूनाइटेड नेशंस में। हिंदुस्तान वर्किंग बाउंड्री जो कश्मीर ऑक्यूपाइड कश्मीर और पाकिस्तान के दरमियान है वर्किंग बाउंड्री, उसमें हिंदुस्तान जो है वॉल बनाने की कोशिश कर रहा है और हम समझते हैं कि मुख्तलिफ सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल रेजोल्यूशंस हैं उनकी खिलाफ वर्जी हो रही है।
First letter was written on the 4th of September, and the letter dated the 4th of September stated that there was no bilateral dialogue. Well, after that, the BSF and the Pak Rangers have already met. So I think that letter itself has contradicted itself, that there is no dialogue. There has been a dialogue. As far as the second letter is concerned, I believe this is based on some kind of a submission made by Mr. Salahuddin, who, as you know very well, is a person that we consider to be a global terrorist. So at the appropriate time, we will respond to this.
Is this all that Pakistan is now reduced to, that you are constantly griping and complaining about why India should not get a UN Security Council seat? Have you no other issues?
Pakistan opposes India's entry into the UN Security Council.
Why?
Okay.
What is your nervousness stemming from? Satisfaction and pride in the fact that India has got to where it is. Support our Security Council bid. You can't block it. You have no locus standi today, you see. You are an unsafe, unreliable, untrustworthy country, suspended from the Commonwealth, isolated all the time, a country that only Hafiz Saeed is safe in, a largely destabilizing role in international affairs. In fact, many people say today, Mr. Pirzada, that one of the reasons why India should get a UN Security Council seat is to be able to put Pakistan in its place, and that's why almost all the Security Council members, including China, are backing our bid. Including China, your so-called friends. Mr. Pirzada, it's a lost case. Give it up.
If the new countries are incorporated in the Security Council, the UN will at least be able to pay its bills.
India is in a bad shape. It has never been in a worse shape than it is today here in South Asia and the world.
Look into the mirror. You are reading out your own CV, Mr. Pirzada, not India's.
I want you to register this fact.
The main issue, or the target if you could call it so, for the Indian Prime Minister this time around on his visit to US is to garner support as much as he can of as many countries as he can for a permanent position in the United Nations Security Council. And the most important meeting in that regard was the meeting hosted by the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi of the leaders of the G4. These are those 4 countries who are looking for a permanent position in the UNSC. And Narendra Modi is trying to garner support of each and every country, from US to Russia, from Ireland to Australia. He understands the importance of support and vote of every country when it comes down to a permanent position in the UNSC.
No, the G4 came together only because of the need for reforming the Security Council. 10 years ago, when the G4 was formed, there was a lack of focus on the subject. I think it is to the credit of the G4 that these past 10 years, each one of us has been able to reach out to countries and explain how it is in their interest to actually join us in reforming the Security Council. Now that the G4 is going to meet in New York 10 years later, and we are now going to focus our energies on consolidating what we have been able to achieve in the last 10 years, but more important, on getting the support of those 128 countries which are needed to pass this resolution in the General Assembly.
There has been a significant thrust, perhaps the biggest push ever, to secure that permanent seat in the UN Security Council. But the road to that permanent seat is a long-winded one with many more obstacles and hurdles. China on the one hand, how do you bring them about? With Xi Jinping and the equation that Narendra Modi shares with the Chinese Premier translate into open support, because China has interests in Pakistan. What happens with the other P5 countries? Will the US go beyond mere lip service? Will other nations who don't see a reason why India should be in the UN Security Council jump over to the fence towards India's side? And remember that India cannot get into the UN Security Council alone. The G4 nations have to get in together. So Germany, Brazil, India, and more importantly Japan has to get the support. The 2/3 majority, everybody leaning in, not just in favor of expansion and reform, but also in favor of the G4 nations to be included into the UN Security Council. So there is a lot to be done. It's not going to happen in a year, but will it happen in Prime Minister Narendra Modi's tenure? One has to wait and see. The indications are positive, but the journey is a long one. In New York City, right at the UN headquarters, this is Arnab for Times Now.